3, 4, and fantastic. All right, so let's get started. This webinar is talking about scopes 3, 4, and 5 of the professional services support RFP that was recently launched by the workforce development team. Next. Great. This webinar will be recorded. We will be posting the recording on the RFP webpage, as well as a PDF of the slide deck. We will have some time for questions. We request that you put questions in the chat. If we do not get to your questions as part of this webinar, please email the RFP workforce@massdc.com and we will respond promptly to your question. Great. So as I mentioned, we'll be talking about 3 of the scopes of work as part of this professional services RFP. In total, there are 5 scopes of work for professional services that span across multiple workforce program areas. The scopes of work tied to our program and grantee technical assistance, curriculum development, ESOL resources. There are 2 deadlines that are associated with this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Great. We're going to start off talking about eligibility of applicants to this RFP. Then we'll provide background information and talk through each of the 3 scopes of work. We'll talk through selection criteria, the application process, timeline, and budget, and then close out with some additional resources and question and answer. Great. And so just to give an overview of the Mass Clean Energy Center, we are a state economic development agency. We're focused on driving the growth of the clean energy economy in Massachusetts. We do this in a number of different ways. We have 4 main areas of focus. We offer a broad range of programming and we act as a convener to the industry. So first is our climate tech innovation and investment. We're really focused on supporting new technologies and innovations that are critical to mitigating the climate crisis. We support climate startups as well as companies to grow and thrive in as part of a very robust ecosystem that we have in Massachusetts because we are an innovation hub. We're focused on accelerating decarbonization. This isn't to focus on reducing barriers for clean energy and climate technologies across buildings, clean transportation, and the grid. We're also focused on offshore wind opportunities. Massachusetts is a hub for offshore wind with the first commercially available offshore wind project. We offer a broad range of programming as well as we have 2 world-class hubs in the state, or specifically ports. And then we have the workforce development team, which really spans across all of these major areas. So we're very focused on driving the growth of a robust and diverse trained clean energy workforce that supports a broad range of industries and technologies. We deploy over $40 million a year across many programs and initiatives. Great, and this is just a shot of our team. We have kind of 3 sub-teams, the Strategy, External Engagement Research Team, Student and Young Adult Pathways, as well as Adult Training MWB supports. This is our workforce team. Great. So you'll see this throughout the webinar, but we will talk through certain aspects, and you'll see in the corner where this applies to the page of the RFP. So we'll talk through who is eligible to apply to this webinar. So it's individuals, organizations, or partnerships or teams that have expertise in the subject matter. So this could be a sole proprietor, a consultant group, workforce development organizations or nonprofits, community-based organizations, for-profit entities, or post-secondary institutions, just to name a few. One of the keys is that the entity or entities are based in Massachusetts, or they have staff that can support the proposed work that are based in Massachusetts. Great, I'll pass it on to Jennifer Applebaum. Jennifer, if you just want to introduce yourself really quick and talk about Scope 3.
Sure. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. I've met some of you, but not all of you. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Applebaum. I'm the Managing Director of the Workforce Development Team. I'm going to be going through Scope 3 and then also Scope 5 later. So I'll start off by talking about Scope 3, which is really focused on being able to get additional curriculum design support for our clean energy career awareness curriculum that we are right now in soft launch, but really very soon expecting a public launch of. And I'll talk through some of the background of that project, the scope of work, and the anticipated timeline connected to it. So if you can go ahead and go forward, that'd be great. So Mass CEC's workforce development team has a really broad commitment to career awareness. I would say this even predates some of our more recent changes and commitments in the fact that the internship program that we've been running for over a decade is certainly one avenue to promoting career awareness. But one of the things that we noticed when we did our Clean Energy Workforce Needs Assessment Survey, a report that we released in 2023, was that career awareness was a major barrier. It was actually the second most common barrier that folks listed to entry into clean energy fields, was just lack of awareness about them. So we've been very focused on trying to expand clean energy and climate tech career awareness, especially with an approach to integrating with existing systems that can really be scaled broadly. So one good example of this is our partnership with the Executive Office of Education and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed through their program called Innovation Career Pathways. This is a program that's open to comprehensive high schools that allows high schools to expose students to a stronger industry approach with an emphasis on industries that have a lot of in-demand jobs. And previously, clean energy and climate tech was not one of those focused industries, but starting in the last year and a half, they announced an opportunity for a new clean energy innovation career pathway. And part of what we did in order to support that was develop a clean energy and climate tech career awareness curriculum that educators can use, that's really intended to bring students, exposure to industry right into the classroom through really strong videos and student-centered learning. This is one of many approaches, and the curriculum is not just relevant to the innovation career pathways, but we do broadly work within other systems in terms of the statewide Connecting Activities program or subsidized youth employment through YouthWorks, broader pre-apprenticeship, and also academic and career advising that happens across the high school system. And then we've also seen that this is really also applicable beyond high school and into early adulthood and adult education as we think about exposure to those fields. So if you can go forward, we have built an existing curriculum. It's called Massachusetts Climate Careers Powering the Future. The curriculum is very much focused around these sort of 4 ideals that we really wanted to be very much something that could be utilized by instructors very as needed. So has all the pieces ready to go. Also allows for a good bit of customization if classrooms are have different practices or different settings. All of those resources are there in the teacher manual and in the additional resources. Additionally, trying to center the student and their journey as they think about what their right career path could be for them and as they learn through all of this. So a lot of the curriculum invites self-reflection, invites sort of deeper interaction or thinking. And then we wanted students in the state to understand that these opportunities are absolutely right in their local economies and backyards, and that this is a commitment that their state has made in a really big way. So the videos that we had created to go alongside this were very intentionally Massachusetts focused, and trying to get to sort of every corner of the state to show the opportunities that are there. Similarly, the concept that, this is an opportunity that can ideally be inclusive of everyone. And there's lots of different occupations that are growing through this work, and there's a range of preparation, skill set, and interest profiles such that hopefully everyone can see themselves in clean energy and climate tech if that's something that interests them. So if we go forward, this is a snapshot of what already exists, and we'll drop the link in the chat as to where you can find this. Like I said, it's in sort of its beta or soft launch setting right now. There's already 18 existing lessons that sort of help students go through this journey. It's meant to be modular. So if a teacher says, I don't have time to do 18 lessons, they could really be thoughtful about doing, maybe 5 to 7, doing like this as a week. The foundational lessons help really set the context of why this matters, and also center student and young adult interest in the space around climate change and climate resiliency. And then the next tranche of lessons focus on high impact clean energy decarbonization efforts around the state so that folks can understand it from a project's perspective and start to get little exposures to careers. And then the final set is very much occupational category driven with some bookend lessons to help students explore how they think about potential careers in this and also how they reflect on it. So if you go forward, This scope of work is to build out more. So we don't see this as an endless process. We certainly think that we want to be smart and thoughtful about how much of this content we put out there. But looking at what we've already done, we recognize that there's some gaps and some opportunity to add some thoughtful additional curriculum modules to the existing curricula that we're releasing, and also to explore perhaps a modality that's a little less taken in the current curriculum structure, which is to be more project-based focused in the design of the modules. So this work is to engage a consultant that can help us expand the existing set of resources and really focus on developing all of these key components and then integrating it into things like our curriculum map, the trainings that we've developed for educators, and all of those other core pieces. I think that I have one more slide. Yeah. So for this, this does not have a priority deadline, unlike some of the other scopes that have an earlier deadline associated with them. We'll be looking at submissions all the way through the May 20th final deadline, anticipating that in the summer timeframe, we would be working with selected partners to let them know about the award, to refine the scope, because we recognize that the scope right now is broad. We haven't said exactly how many modules or exactly what topics. We think that that is better done through sort of a pre-contracting phase. And then going into FY26, starting in that July or August timeframe, getting these additional modules developed with an anticipation of collaboratively setting out a timeline for deliverables, and then anticipating that there's some opportunity for further refinement in the following year as we continue to get more feedback from schools and organizations that are using these resources. I think that's it for scope 3. Elizabeth, is that correct? Yes, I'm going to hand it back to Elizabeth.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, now we're going to talk about scope 4 and the 3 aligned strands that are part of it. Next. Great. So this scope of work is really in service to a RFP that we put out recently for a community college heat pump and HVAC training network program. And I'm going to speak just briefly about that as part of background for the scope. So the funding made available was just over $14 million. And it was the community colleges, the 15 community colleges in the state were the ones that were eligible to apply for this. The focus is really to either to establish new or to upgrade heat pump and HVAC training centers at our community colleges, to add staff capacity and training seats, establish and grow wraparound support services and retention supports for the participating students, and then to build and scale career pathways in these fields, as well as thinking about sustainability for the future for the programming. Next. Great. So this is just high level what the major goals of this program are. The first piece is really to increase community colleges' capacity for kind of ramping up their ability to train on both heat pump and HVAC. The intended goal is to train at least an additional 500 learners through either new or expanded programs. As part of this, we're strongly focused on developing or supporting the development of a clear framework of industry expectations and priorities for HVAC and heat pump training. As part of the broader funding and tied to this specific scope of work is the creation of a standardized heat pump training, and then aligned with it are each ESOL curricular resources to support both new entrants and incumbent workers. A couple other pieces of this also tied to, having very strong outcomes for community colleges, and then really thinking about the sustainability of the programs past our funding, our direct funding through this. Next. Great. Okay. So as mentioned, there are 3 major strands that are part of this scope of work. I think what I'm just going to mention on the forefront is that we encourage applicants that are considering to apply, that if you certainly could apply to one strand, but we strongly encourage you to consider partnerships and collaborations if you have a strength in one strand but don't in another. You can go to the RFP, and we do have a resource online to offer opportunities to connect entities together on our webpage. So take a look there if you're thinking about this and are thinking about collaboration or partnership. Next. All right, so we're going to start with Strand A, which is the curriculum design consultant to develop a universal heat pump curriculum, as well as a lab resource toolkit. So this is a resource that we will be providing to the community colleges as part of their development and build out of a broader heat pump and HVAC training curriculum. This will help kind of expedite and move them forward in their process. It is not something that we're going to obligate community colleges to incorporate. So um, that's just one thing to take note of. We are developing it. It is a resource. We're not going to be obliging them to take it on if they do not want to. So what the intent of this, we're looking for a resource that would be in the range of 20 to 40 hours of combined direct instruction as well as hands-on lab time. It would be covering aspects including the fundamentals of the different heat pump technologies and how they work, whether it's air source, ground source, or water source, and then use applications for heat pumps specific to ductless mini splits, as well as installation, servicing, and testing of heat pumps. One thing to note that we've mentioned in the RFP is the idea of looking at the US DOE energy skilled heat pump program standards, and then kind of developing out this in a way that it could potentially meet those standards for recognition. We've also referenced other resources that we know that are out there tied to Efficiency Maine's heat pump curriculum, as well as our own vocational high school CTE HVAC standards, as well as other resources. So definitely take a look there as part of this. Next. Great. So some other things to consider as part of an application, we would want to understand what learners would be working towards, if it would be an EPA 608 technician certification or NATE Ready to Work certificate or HotWorks. We would expect that the curriculum would be organized to have priority lessons with summaries, key questions, and learning objectives. Materials that we would expect would include slide decks or teacher manuals and potentially any student handouts. We would collaborate with the consultant on a subset of other small resources, including information about kind of understanding what's going on in Massachusetts with regards to the impacts of heat pumps on our electrification and decarbonization climate targets and things like that. The lab toolkit specifically, we're looking for resources for in-lab sessions, as well as kind of what are examples of major topics, goals, and then also kind of materials that are required for those labs. And we would want this to be manufacturer agnostic. Great. So tied to the heat pump curriculum, we are looking, this is now Strand B, we are looking for the development of some career contextualized ESOL instruction materials that would be supporting limited English learners that would be coming through this programming. So as part of this, we would expect that the resources would support there's kind of three major components to it: the kind of learning to learn, which is supporting study skills for workplace training that are contextualized to heat pumps and HVAC, developing workplace vocabulary, so that as an individual who has a limited English learner is moving through this, that they're learning English in the context of their heat pump training and HVAC training, problem solving our tools in addressing kind of common workplace challenges, whether it's working with customers, working with your employer, or working with colleagues. So these concepts would be integrated into that heat pump curriculum and lab resources that was just mentioned. Strand C. All right, so this is tied to reviewing the Chapter 74 heat pump, the HVAC standards and skills resource, really reviewing it and providing feedback on what aspects of it are recommended to be maintained, that this is a resource that would be provided to the community colleges. And so what the intent is that really flagging for us, what aspects would need to be either expanded on or changed, because we recognize that this standards and skills resource is specific for technical high school students, some of which have gotten some pre-training in some of the basics of tools and kind of basic skills on the ground. And so we really want to offer a resource to community colleges when we think about community college students who are coming into this who may have little or no background or experience in HVAC and kind of just trades in general. So that is a major piece of it. We also are looking for a resource document that really compiles various open source instructional tools and career awareness resources, any open source curriculum that are out there that could be helpful for either HVAC or heat pump. And then also providing an overview of heat pump and HVAC credentials and credentialing entities that are out there. And then lastly is to think through refresher resources that are out there for upskilling for entry-level HVAC installers. Such as those, we give an example of those that come through the Mass Save Heat Pump Installer Network. Next. Excellent. All right. So as a next step, through this does have a priority deadline of April 15th, 11:59 p.m. Applications are submitted. Then through April, we'll be, and then early May, we'll be going through the review process. We'll be selecting the consultant or consultants and contracting. At that same time, we will be working with selected community colleges as part of their planning and facilities build out timeframe, contracting with them as well. And we really anticipate kind of the late summer or early fall timeframe is really when community colleges are going to be seeking out resources as they develop out their HVAC and heat pump curriculum. So we recognize that there may be some resources that may not be fully defined out as part of this scope. We hope that applicants that apply think through their timing of what is feasible to be able to be completed between now and that kind of late summer or fall timeframe. Recognizing that, again, we anticipate that some of these resources will be in parallel to the work that the community colleges are doing. And then winter of 2026 and beyond, this is really tied to what the community colleges will be doing. A small subset of them will be looking to launch their first round of training cohorts with students as early as kind of the winter timeframe. Others will be starting in the spring. We do have some funding to expand out training seats that we will have for community colleges. And then also if we have any remaining funds, thinking through refining this program and offering additional funding to community colleges to expand out their work. So that will be ongoing as part of this broader program. Great, I'll pass it back to Jennifer.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, so this is the final scope that we're going over in this particular webinar. Scope 5 is focused on us getting consultant support to try and transition some of our existing resources that we use with grantees and staff into actual more formalized high quality learning modules that are meant to be delivered in an asynchronous manner through a learning management system. So I'll give you some broad background and then talk a little bit about the scope of work and the timeline. If you can go ahead and go forward. Just to have a sense of what we do and how this fits in and why it's important, I thought it was useful to share some of these slides that capture the broader mandate of our team and our department. So some of this even connects back to what Elizabeth shared at the very front, but in terms of our department, we're really focused on thinking about how we meet the needs of both workers and industry in the current setting and in the anticipated short-term demands, and doing so in a way that really helps to create a more robust pipeline that's far more inclusive than the existing one, that leans into broader career awareness strategies to ensure that pipeline, and that looks at how we handle particular challenges around the availability of these trainings and ensuring that they really are very well synced up to employer and industry needs and allow folks to transition directly into placements and have the kind of skills that also endure, so that it isn't just about potentially one job immediately out of training, but a fuller picture of a career and a pathway spectrum. So if you can go forward, we do this work in three really major ways. I think the one that folks most often think about is that we're a funder, and we've talked a little bit about how we have a robust set of funding available. Paired with that funding, we really think about technical assistance, and this is where this is very connected to Scope 5. So much of what we're trying to do is not only ensure that that entities have access to public funds to support these programs, but that they get really good support in thinking through the best practices. And we recognize that part of what we need to do is make these resources more available in more modalities on a regular basis. Because right now we're really doing it a lot through workshops and, either virtual or in person. But as entities have staff changes, as they grow and change their program, what they need at different times can vary from the existing schedule that we have set up. So if you go forward, we'll talk a little bit more about what this looks like broadly. So in FY25, the department has, north of 40 million in grant funding and program initiatives, and a very broad scope and portfolio of programs that we think about across 3 core populations. Our students and young adult programming that supports training for both new entrants and incumbent workers, and then work that supports climate critical small businesses. I'm not going to read the list of programs, but most of these programs have grantees that are receiving some type of technical assistance from us. And even in the case of something like the Clean Energy Internship Program, where we're not working with folks in a grantee aspect, we also there are often thinking about how we share best practices and how we get information out in ways that are really meaningful and accessible. So in order for us to do all our work well, we really want to get some assistance in terms of taking the materials that we have to a next level. You can go forward. This gives you a sense of, this is our part of our core strategy anyway. So these are our 4 strategies that as a department we focus on. And you can see that orange one, build capacity for stronger outcomes, is very much anchored by that technical assistance component. And I would say that all of the other 3 core components of the core strategies are related to this as well, in the sense of it's, one of the ways that we really support barrier removal or increased inclusivity is by getting workforce best practices out there. One of the things that we're trying to do in many cases through these resources is help folks think about, the most effective partnership design and how they can work and tap into other resources. And then also how they can leverage labor market data and others to understand how they align their programs. So this body of work is integral to all of these strategies that we're working on. If you go forward one more, you see the actual scope here. So as I mentioned, we have tools and resources. They've often been distributed through like synchronous virtual webinars or meetings that are interactive, or in-person settings. We plan to continue to do some of that, but we'd like to see some of those resources be formatted into asynchronous modules that folks can access and can interact with, and that our staff, when they're working with grantees and programs, can point them directly to these resources and not have to say something like, well, last fall we did this really great workshop on blah, blah, blah. And, we'll try and tell you about it and send you a deck from it. That really doesn't help someone get all the way there. So hopefully the thought is that with support and with a scope of work, we can transition a lot of the good resources that we have to reach more folks and have even more impact. You see some of the things that we think are key to this body of work in terms of expertise listed across the screen. I'm not going to read through them, but I'll just highlight the fact that we do think that that all of these components can help us deliver even higher quality results, and that we are actively working on a workforce development platform that will allow us to access a learning management system, but ensuring that whoever we work with is comfortable with thinking about how to format to various LMSs and what the best practices is helpful as we move forward on this. I'm going to go ahead and move along to timeline. This, like the other scope that I spoke to, does not have a priority deadline, so we're accepting through May 20th. Similarly, anticipating to do awards and scope of work and contracting in the summer, and then anticipating that the scope of work will take us mainly through FY26 to get these initial resources developed. But as we continue to elicit more input from our grantees, we anticipate that they'll continue to say, like, this resource is helpful, but it could be more helpful if, or we also need a resource on this other topic. So we do see this as a body of work that's likely to have a foundational component to it, and then require not only a revision based on feedback, but also an expansion based on targeted identification of other high impact topics. So that gives you a sense of it. And I think we're moving on to sort of the next segment around selection criteria. I'll pass it back to Elizabeth.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer. So we have kind of 5 major aspects that we look at when we review applications. First is really looking at the summary of qualifications and the applicant's background to see that it aligns with the scope of work that is being proposed and that they have experience and positive outcomes that really align with that scope of work. The second piece is quality of the work plan or approach that they have for the proposed scope of work, so that they really demonstrate an understanding as part of their application of the process and the timeline needed to accomplish the work and completed deliverables, as well as the flexibility of being able to work through if we have contingency options or be able to maximize opportunities as they formalize the kind of final deliverables. Quality of examples, this is tied to being able to provide Mass EC with examples of previous work that they've done that just demonstrates a range of their techniques and skills. It demonstrates capacity to develop products that are effective for similar populations or program goals, as well as thinks through best practices regarding a subject matter. So we give the example of those student-centered learning videos. If they can, provide us with something that's not part of the specific scope of work, but examples of quality production or point of view that align with a particular scope. Next slide. In addition to these, we are looking at the value compared to the budget, that their rates are competitive in comparison to other scopes of work. And then that they're reasonable throughout the time and the services required to finalize the scope. And then lastly, we will check references, both that the references are relevant to the scope of work as well as that they provide the feedback that aligns with the applicant's work quality and their timeliness and responsiveness to feedback. Excellent. So as part of the application process, you should be, of course, reviewing the RFP and the attachments to understand the opportunity and the requirements, as well as the objectives. You are part of this webinar right now, so that is fantastic, which we'll be recording. And then really you can reach out to us right now through each of those deadlines. You can email us at rfpworkforce@massec.com. We will respond to your question directly within a day or two. We're also compiling responses. We're kind of aggregating them, so we won't obviously put your name there. We'll keep it generalized, but we'll have a kind of aggregated list of responses to questions that we'll be posting every 2 weeks to our RFP webpage. So if you want to check back in about a week or so, we'll be posting the first round of that, so you can see what our responses are to potentially other questions. And that will be kind of rolling every 2 weeks as we continue. And then, just being mindful of those 2 different timelines. So as we mentioned, there's a priority deadline for scopes 2 and 4. We need to receive those by end of day on April 15th. And then applications for scopes 1, 3, and 5 are looking at that May 20th, 2025 timeframe. Excellent. So as part of this, you'll be submitting the authorization and authorized applicant signature and acceptance form, your application yourself, and then looking through the RFP, for those examples that we may be requesting. That's important. We also included as part of attachment 3 a sample service agreement. We recommend that you review through that. You do not need to submit that to us unless there is some language in it that you see as a concern. And if that's the case, then you need to let us know as part of the application that whether you have a question or concern about some of that either boilerplate language or anything in it that could be a concern. And then really kind of outside of that, we wouldn't seek to have anything else in addition to be submitted because it will not be reviewed as part of the scoring outside of what's requested in the RFP. Next. All right, this is just a very quick budget slide. For scope 3 and 5, it's really the kind of fee is really dependent on the scope that's agreed to as part of the review and contracting process. For scope 4, for the 3 strands combined, we're looking at $600,000 as our budget across the 3 strands. Next. Okay. We've talked through this a couple of times at this point, but as I mentioned, the question and answers, we'll be posting those every 2 weeks throughout the duration of this RFP. Scopes, that's the webinars for today, sorry. And the proposals, as I said, are due either at that priority deadline of April 15th for scopes 2 and 4, or on May 20th for scopes 1, 3, and 5. We will interview, top applicants as we request, and then notifications of award will be rolling through July. Obviously, the applicants that apply to the priority timeframes or priority deadlines will be selected and announced earlier and notified specifically, and those that apply at that kind of May 20th deadline will be a later notification, review and notification, if that makes sense. Next. All right, I see no questions in the chat. So you, some of you, all of you, no one put questions in the chat. That's fine. We'll open it now for the Q&A. And we want to be mindful of your time. We'll probably close this out a little after 2:45, but we want to open it up now for question and answer. We'll start with Laura Jean.
Thanks, Elizabeth and team. This was very helpful. Regarding community college subject matter experts or partners that might be potentially engaged in the course of working on Scope 4, given that you all have the obvious suspects who would be working on such a thing under contract with you and actively working on heat pump curriculum, et cetera, or training to reach the participants in the regions. Is it your preference that we go in with partners on our application, or would you prefer that we collaborate with you to select the correct community college partners to collaborate with on the efforts that are outlined in the scope of work for those strands? Thank you.
Elizabeth, I'm happy to take that. Thanks, Laura Jean. So we do anticipate supporting the process of including the community colleges as stakeholders. So applicants do not need to, for Scope 4, do not need to plan or partner in advance with community colleges in order to ensure their participation and input into the design. We will bake that in and help facilitate that.
Okay, thank you.
Heather.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, my question is, I did submit a question last week. Haven't heard back yet, but I just thought I'd throw it out to the group anyway, since we're all here, which is for Scope 5. The RFP references the already developed technical resources, i.e. webinars, etc. I find it difficult to develop sort of a scope of work without knowing the number of resources that are available and looking to be converted, you know, how much, like what all the formats are, etc. Is there a location of those, a listing of those, or how do you suggest going about estimating when we're not sure of what those assets are?
Yeah, so I do see another question from Jason as well. I think that we can, as part of our Q&A, post some samples. We will not be able to post all of our resources or make them all available for advanced review. But this is also why in the timeline for those scopes, we queued that there would be an additional scope of work development as part of pre-contracting. So we do anticipate that that you're going to need more detail in order to get across the finish line in terms of estimating like how many hours you would need to work on something. But for those scopes, we've requested, you know, a broad sense of rate and approach, and then anticipate through interview and through pre-contracting to do refinement.
Thank you.
Great. I see a question in the chat, but I think that you largely responded to it, Jennifer. Do we have additional?
One other question about, oh no, that was your note. Okay. So yes, Jason, I responded as I was speaking. We'll add some samples to the posted Q&A as a way for folks to take a look at least some of what we're talking about.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave a little bit more time for Q&A because we've got us here. Anyone else?
Since there's time, I'll ask a picky question. For the scopes that require a minimum time commitment or estimate, can you speak to what you're looking for there in terms of what that's helping you figure out so we can respond? Because I mean, I could give you 2 hours if you want them, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think what we were trying to think through is making sure that someone would consider it worth their while. And so recognizing that, especially as folks balance different projects, that it's oftentimes helpful for them to have a not a full guarantee, but at least a sense that if they decide to move forward with it, that it's going to be amount of work that feels tenable. And we've gotten really different feedback from different applicants historically about what that threshold is. So that's just what we're trying to understand to make sure that that we get off on the right foot, that this doesn't potentially feel like it's not a good use of someone's time because maybe it's not enough hours. And that we're also mindful like what that top end is so that we're not thinking that folks can balance more of a TA load than they could.
Got it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other final questions?
I see a question in the chat. It just disappear. Anyway, partnerships are something that we would recommend if you are considering applying to, in this case, scope 4, but you feel uncomfortable with, like you don't have this expertise on, let's say, one of the scopes. It's a recommendation, is not a requirement to apply to all 3 scopes. It's a recommendation that you can partner and collaborate, and we offer some resources on how to do that as part of the RFP page.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm just going to put a finer point on that because we've got scopes and strands. So I think what Elizabeth was getting at was that if you're applying to scope 4, we recognize that maybe the same group that would be really expert in developing the heat pump curriculum and assessing the HVAC frameworks may not have contextualized ESOL in their wheelhouse or background. And so it may take some partnering to think about the right mix there. And again, you can come in for individual or unique strands, but it certainly could be optimal for folks to have established in advance that they can work together and that it would make sense in terms of how they would approach those workflows, especially because they're likely to be pretty concurrent.
Excellent. All right. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. I want to just take a few moments to talk about some of our aligned different opportunities and resources we have. So we'll jump there and then we will close out. So if you can just go to the next slide. Yep, additional opportunities. Great. So Mass EC has 2 programs. One is the Clean Energy Internship Program. This is actually looking at technical trades work and learning, where we provide support for clean energy employers to find qualified students to work with them over a period of time for technical trades work and learning. This is primarily through our vocational technical schools, as well as After Dark or Career Technical Initiative students. And they collaborate with a clean energy employer as part of either their co-op or during the summer, and NASCC reimburses employers for that paid on the job training and learning opportunity. So the reimbursement can be up to $8,640. We also have a summer internship program that is open right now for clean energy employers to work with college, 2-year, 4-year college students, or those that are completing a training program to get to work for 12 weeks during the summer, and that's the same dollar amount there. So please take a look at our website for more information. Next. Excellent. This is just a high-level snapshot of many of our workforce equity programmings. If you look at programming to the right, we have implementation training opportunities, as well as planning and capacity, as well as climate critical underserved business support programs. I'm not going to go into the details right now, but take a look at our website. We also offer funding that's a little more broadly categorized: climate critical workforce training, equipment, and infrastructure funds. And those are funds that can be applied to from a range of entities that are looking for training, upskilling, or equipment and infrastructure opportunities. So feel free to go to our website to learn more. Next. All right, lastly, just to make the folks on the call here aware, we are going to be hosting a 2025 Northeast Regional Clean Energy and Climate Tech Workforce Summit. It's going to be hosted at Essex North Shore Technical and Agricultural School on May 8th. We're really excited about this. We have a lot of fantastic partners here that we'll be collaborating with, and we're really, focused on being a convener in this region. We're going to be engaging with industry leaders and educators, workforce partners to address capacity challenges, cross-industry collaboration, as well as strategies to empower a changing workforce with a very strong focus on the Northeast region. So if you are interested, you can go to our Eventbrite page, which is not linked here, but just thank you. That's fantastic. Take a look in the chat. All right, and with that, I think we're there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our inbox. We will respond back to you. We really appreciate you being here today. And as I said, this will be recorded and we will post it online. So with that, thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing from you.